The twin suns of Veralia were setting, casting a golden glow across the alien capital. The great palace of the Zlar Empire stood like a mountain of silver and glass, shining in the fading light. Inside the grand hall, thousands of alien nobles and warriors stood in silence, waiting for the queen to speak. It was the day of the Unity Ceremony, a tradition that marked peace between the alien empire and the human colonies. Among the guards standing along the shining marble walls was Ethan Cross, the only human assigned to protect the queen herself. Ethan's eyes scanned the crowd carefully. He knew this was more than just a celebration. Political tensions were high, and there were whispers of war. But the queen, dressed in her ceremonial armor of gold and crystal, smiled with calm grace as she stepped forward to address her people. Her voice echoed in the great hall, deep and strong, speaking of unity, hope, and the promise of a shared future. The crowd listened in respectful silence, alien banners waving gently in the air. Then it happened. The queen's voice faltered mid-sentence. Her golden eyes widened in shock. Her hand reached for her chest. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as her knees buckled. For a moment, no one moved. The hall was frozen in disbelief. Ethan's instincts took over. He rushed forward as the queen collapsed, catching her before she hit the marble floor. "Medic!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. The alien nobles broke into frightened murmurs, their jewel-like eyes darting to each other. High-ranking guards ran in, surrounding the queen as palace medics appeared with strange glowing instruments. A medic scanned her with a silver device, the light flickering rapidly. Then came the words that sent a shiver through everyone present. "Heart failure," the medic said in a low, tense voice. "But I don't know why." Ethan looked down at the queen's face. Her breaths were shallow, her skin pale under its golden hue. Her fingers clutched weakly at his arm, as if trying to say something. But no words came, only a faint whisper of air. The royal commander, a tall alien with armor made of living crystal, stepped closer. "Get her to the medical wing now," he ordered, his voice tight with urgency. The medics lifted the queen onto a floating stretcher and hurried away, the crystal floor echoing with their steps. The grand hall was now in chaos. Alien nobles shouted questions, others demanded answers. Some turned to Ethan with suspicion in their eyes. Humans were still seen as outsiders here. Ethan ignored the glares and followed the medics, his hand never far from his weapon. He knew something was wrong, deeply wrong. The queen had been in perfect health during the security checks that morning. There was no reason for her to suddenly collapse, unless they reached the sealed doors of the Royal Medical Wing. Two alien guards crossed their spears, blocking Ethan's path. "Only medical staff beyond this point," one of them said sharply. "She's my responsibility," Ethan protested, his voice hard. But the guards did not move. The doors slid shut in front of him with a cold hiss, leaving him alone in the corridor. He stood there, breathing slowly. Through the thick glass wall to his right, he could see the twin moons rising over the city. His reflection stared back at him, a human in dark armor, surrounded by a world that did not fully trust him. Behind the sealed doors, he could hear muffled voices, urgent and afraid. Then faintly, he caught a sentence. It was the voice of an alien medic, low but sharp. "This is no accident. Someone wants her dead." Ethan's jaw tightened. He turned away, his mind already racing. If someone wanted the queen dead, it meant more than just a palace crime. It meant the fragile peace between humans and the alien empire could shatter. In an instant, he could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him as he walked down the empty corridor. Somewhere in this palace, the truth was hiding. And he knew one thing for certain: if he didn't find it soon, the queen would not survive. The night fell over the alien capital, and the palace changed. By day it was a place of light and ceremony, but under the glow of the twin moons, its silver towers cast long, sharp shadows like silent blades. Ethan Cross stood alone in the outer Guard hall, the air cold against his face. The queen was still alive, but barely. Hidden behind sealed doors and guarded by more soldiers than he had ever seen in one place. Officially, they said she was resting, but Ethan could feel the tension in every corner. It wasn't just fear. It was the feeling of secrets moving in the dark. As he patrolled the echoing corridors, Ethan noticed something strange. Many of the alien guards avoided his gaze. A few whispered to each other when they thought he could not hear. And in the great courtyard below, small groups of alien nobles gathered in tight circles. Speaking in quick, urgent tones, Ethan's instincts told him this wasn't panic. It was plotting. He turned a corner and stopped. Two high-ranking alien officers stood near a statue, their voices low. "The signal is ready," one of them said, his voice almost a hiss. "And the poison of the mind will finish what the heart could not," replied the other. The words sent a chill through Ethan. He took a silent step closer, pressing himself against the cold wall. The first voice spoke again, slower this time. "But the human must not know." A faint vibration passed through the floor, the sound of heavy doors sealing somewhere in the palace. When Ethan looked again, the officers were gone, vanished into the maze of corridors. He stood there, the words burning in his mind. Signal, poison, human must not know. They weren't just hiding the truth from the public. They were hiding it from him. Back in his small guard quarters, Ethan sat in the dim light. The hum of the palace machinery was constant, but underneath it, he thought he could hear faint tapping, like coded messages moving through the walls. He remembered the queen's gasp, the fear in her golden eyes. She had wanted to say something before. She fell, but couldn't. What if that was his only chance to hear the truth from her own lips? The door to his quarters slid open without a sound. An alien medic stood there, his face pale and his breathing quick. "You need to stop asking questions, human," the medic said, his voice shaking. Ethan didn't move. "Why?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. The medic glanced over his shoulder, as if someone might be listening. "Because they've already chosen the scapegoat," he whispered, "and it's you." Before Ethan could reply, the medic pressed something into his hand, a small silver data crystal. "Find the signal," the medic said urgently. "That's where the truth is." Then he slipped back into the hallway, disappearing before Ethan could even ask his name. Ethan looked at the crystal, feeling its faint warmth. He didn't know what was on it, but he knew one thing. The conspiracy wasn't just about the queen's illness. It was about setting fire to the fragile peace between humans and aliens. Later that night, as the moons reached their highest point, Ethan moved through the palace like a shadow. He avoided patrols, listening for the faint tapping he had heard before. It led him to the lower levels, where the air smelled faintly of metal and old dust. Here, in the underbelly of the palace, the grand silver walls gave way to dark metal and narrow tunnels. He followed the sound to a heavy door marked with alien runes, the kind that meant restricted. The door was locked with a strange energy seal. Ethan inserted the data crystal into the control panel. With a soft pulse of light, the seal broke. Inside, he found a dimly lit chamber filled with alien signal equipment, strange towers, glowing panels, and screens showing data streams he couldn't fully read. But in the center of the room was a single transmission log. He tapped the screen, and there it was, a signal sent to the palace moments before the queen collapsed. The source was encrypted, but Ethan recognized one thing immediately. The transmission came from inside the capital, not from any enemy world. A noise behind him made him spin around. An alien guard stood in the doorway, weapon drawn. "You've seen too much, human," the guard said coldly. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his hand moving toward his own weapon. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the alien machines. Somewhere, above them, the queen lay fighting for her life, and here, in the palace's shadowed depths, Ethan realized the truth. The real danger wasn't coming from outside the empire. It was already here, inside its walls, waiting for the right moment to strike. The palace was never silent, not truly, even at night, deep within its walls. There was the faint hum of alien machines, the whisper of ventilation systems, the soft click of security drones gliding through empty halls. But tonight, Ethan Cross heard something else, footsteps that didn't belong. They were light, careful, like someone who didn't want to be heard. And they were coming from the direction of the Forbidden's medical wing. He followed from a distance, his boots making no sound on the crystal floor. Ahead, the corridor curved into darkness, lit only by the faint blue glow of wall panels. A shadow slipped through the wing's massive security doors. And for a moment, Ethan saw the faint shimmer of an access card in the intruder's hand. Those doors were locked to everyone except the highest-ranking medics and the royal family. Whoever this was, they weren't supposed to be there at this hour. Ethan approached the doors. Alien runes glowed faintly across their surface. Warning in the old language. Life and death within. Unauthorized entry punishable by death. He touched the panel, locked, as expected. But the data crystal the medic had given him in Part 2 was still in his pocket. He slid it into the side slot, and with a faint hiss, the heavy doors began to open. The air inside was colder, sharp with the smell of antiseptic and something else, something metallic. The corridors here were narrow and lined with transparent walls, behind which strange alien medical machines pulsed with light. Some rooms were filled with floating tanks holding glowing fluids. Others contained long silver tables surrounded by mechanical arms tipped with surgical tools. Ethan's heart pounded. He was deep inside the most secure medical zone in the Empire. And if he was caught, there would be no trial, no questions, only execution at the far end of the hall. He saw the intruder again. It was an alien medic, tall and thin, carrying a small black case. Ethan stayed in the shadows. Moving quietly, the medic entered a sealed chamber, and for a moment, the door was left slightly open. Inside, Ethan saw a row of holoscreens displaying the Queen's medical scans. Her heart was surrounded by faint red filaments that pulsed with an unnatural light. It didn't look like disease. It looked like something alive. The medic reached into the black case and pulled out a small container filled with the same glowing red substance Ethan had seen in the prison vial. Before Ethan could move closer, a soft click came from behind him. A voice said coldly, "Turn around, human." Two alien guards stood there, weapons drawn, their eyes hard. "Step away from the door," one of them ordered. Ethan raised his hand slowly, his mind racing. The guards marched him back down the hall, away from the chamber. As they passed one of the glass walls, Ethan caught a glimpse of the Queen herself, lying inside a stasis pod. Surrounded by tubes and glowing wires, her body perfectly still, her face was pale, her chest rising and falling in slow, mechanical rhythm. The sight hit him harder than any weapon could. If they were keeping her in stasis, it meant she was too weak to survive on her own. The guards threw Ethan against the wall. "You don't belong here," one hissed. "This wing is not for humans." Ethan met the alien stare without blinking. "Then tell me why the Queen's scans show something alive inside her heart." The guard froze for a fraction of a second, just enough for Ethan to see the fear in his eyes. Then the guard shoved him toward the exit. "Go back to your post, Cross, or you won't live to see another sunrise." Back in the main corridor, the heavy doors slammed shut behind him. Ethan leaned against the wall, breathing hard. He didn't have proof the others would accept, but he had seen enough to know the truth. The Queen's heart was under attack by something unnatural, something that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. The red filaments weren't just poison, they were alive. And whoever brought them into the palace had access to the most secure places in the Empire. Somewhere above, the palace bells began to toll, slow, heavy, echoing through the night. Ethan straightened, his hand closing around the data crystal. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. If the Forbidden's wing was where they hid the truth, then he was going to break it wide open. But first, he had to survive long enough to see the morning. Asterisk. The palace library was nothing like the rest of the shining empire. It was older, darker, and quieter, built from black stone. Instead of silver walls, here, the air felt heavy, carrying the scent of dust and memories. Rows of towering shelves reached so high that their tops vanished into shadow. This was where the empire kept its oldest records, written long before humans ever set foot among the stars. Ethan Cross had never been here before. Humans weren't allowed inside without direct royal permission, and the Queen was in no condition to give it. But tonight, he wasn't asking for permission. The medic's words, the red filaments in the Queen's heart, the case of glowing poison, all of it led to one thought that refused to leave his mind. He had seen that substance before, not in real life, but in an old Earth War story told by his grandfather, according to the story. During the first human-alien conflict centuries ago, humans had discovered a plant deep in the jungles of Earth. Its pollen was harmless to humans, but deadly to certain alien species, especially the Zlar. The pollen would travel through the victim's bloodstream, attaching itself to the heart. It didn't kill instantly. Instead, it grew, weaving itself into living tissue until the heart could no longer beat. But the plant had been destroyed long ago. Every seed burned, every root erased from the planet, or so history claimed. Ethan moved through the library with careful steps. The glow from the wall lamps barely lit the narrow aisles. Every shelf was packed with crystal data tablets, some so old their inscriptions had faded. He searched until he found the section marked with the old war sigil, a symbol of a broken star. Sliding one of the dusty tablets into a reader, he watched as ancient images appeared in the air, soldiers in old armor, burning alien cities. And there it was, the plant glowing red under sunlight, its tiny threads curling like living veins. A voice made him freeze. "You shouldn't be here." He turned to see an old alien historian standing in the shadows, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The alien stepped closer, his voice low. That plant was called Karis blood, banned by every civilized world. Ethan's heart pounded. But it's supposed to be extinct. The historian shook his head slowly. Extinct? No. Only hidden. Ethan glanced around, making sure no one else was there. "Tell me everything you know," he said. The historian hesitated, then spoke in a whisper. The Karis blood was not just a weapon. It was a message, he said. It was used only in assassinations meant to start wars. Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. If the Queen had been poisoned with Karis blood, it wasn't just about killing her. It was about destroying the fragile peace between humans and the Zlar forever. The historian stepped even closer, his eyes narrowing. "Do you know what happens to the one who finds the truth?" he asked. Ethan met his gaze. "What?" "They die before they can speak it," the historian said, his voice like a warning. Then he slipped something into Ethan's hand, a small metal fragment with strange markings. "Find the place this belongs to, and you will find the one who brought the plant here," the historian said. Before Ethan could ask more, the old alien turned and vanished into the shadows between the shelves. Ethan looked at the fragment. It was curved, like part of a larger object. The markings weren't Zlar script or human writing. He didn't recognize them, but something about the style felt old, older than the war. Somewhere deep in his mind, a thought formed. Whatever this was, it had been hidden for centuries, and someone had just pulled it out into the light. The question was why, and why now? He slid the tablet back into the shelf and left the library. The corridor outside felt colder than before. Every step he took echoed against the dark walls. Somewhere in the palace above, the Queen lay trapped in stasis, her heart slowly being claimed by the living poison. And now Ethan knew the truth. The attack on her life had roots that reached deep into history. If he wanted to save her, he would have to go further than anyone had gone in 100 years. Not just into danger, but into secrets that entire empires had killed to protect. The knock on Ethan Cross's door came at dawn, sharp and urgent. He was still dressed from the night before, the metal fragment from the historian lying on the table in front of him. He opened the door to find Princess Vera, her golden eyes wide, her voice trembling. "We need to talk," she said, pulling him into the corridor before he could speak. For a moment, Ethan felt hope. The Queen's daughter was the one person in the palace who had always treated him with respect. If anyone could help him expose the truth, it would be her. They moved quickly through quiet halls, past guards who seemed to watch them a little too closely. Vera said nothing until they reached a private garden high in the east tower. The early light bathed the crystal leaves in soft gold, but there was no beauty in her expression. She turned to him, her voice low. "I know what you've been doing." Ethan kept his face still. "Then you know why?" Her jaw tightened. "I also know the council is watching you. They think you poisoned her," she said. The words hit him like a blow. "That's insane," Ethan replied sharply. "You've seen the scans, you know this isn't human technology." But Vera looked away, her voice colder now. "I told them you've been sneaking into restricted areas, speaking to people you shouldn't, and hiding things from the royal guard." Ethan stared at her, his mind refusing to believe what he was hearing. "You told them?" he asked, his voice low. She met his gaze at last, and there was no kindness in her eyes. "I had to," she said. "You're dangerous, Ethan. If you're wrong, you'll destroy the peace my mother has fought for." Before he could answer, heavy footsteps filled the garden. 6 armed guards appeared from behind the crystal trees, weapons raised. "Ethan Cross," the commander said, "by order of the council, you are under arrest for treason." The guards moved fast, slamming him to the ground, cold metal restraints locking around his wrists. Ethan didn't fight. Not yet. He looked up at Vera, searching for some sign of doubt, but she only turned away. They dragged him through the halls, past alien nobles who whispered and stared. By the time they reached the lower dungeons, word of his arrest had already spread through the palace. The cell was small, the walls damp with condensation from the palace's cooling systems. The door shut with a deep metallic clang, leaving him in half-darkness. For a long time, Ethan sat against the wall, his mind replaying Vera's words over and over. Betrayal was a wound that didn't bleed on the outside, but it cut deeper than any blade. Then a voice spoke from the shadows. "They've been planning this since before you were born." Ethan's eyes adjusted to the dim light. In the far corner sat another prisoner, human, older, his face lined with age and hard years. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. The man smiled faintly. "Someone who knows the Karis blood didn't die with the old wars." The man reached into his sleeve and pulled out a small glass vial. Inside, the red filaments writhed like living threads, glowing faintly in the dark. "This," the man said, holding it up, "is exactly what's in the Queen's heart." Ethan's breath caught. "Where did you get that?" The man's smile widened. "From the same place the council gets theirs." Before Ethan could ask more, the sound of alarms blared through the dungeon. Shouts echoed from above. The ground trembled with heavy impacts. The old man stood, moving with surprising speed. "Looks like your rescue is here," he said, tossing the vial into Ethan's hands. "Don't waste this chance. Cross, the truth is worse than you think." The cell door burst open, and chaos filled the hallway. Smoke drifted through the air. Guards clashed with shadowy figures wearing stolen palace armor. Ethan slipped into the fight, using the confusion to disappear into the winding corridors. The vial in his pocket felt heavier than any weapon. Somewhere above, the Queen's life was still slipping away, and now Ethan had proof, but he also had more enemies than he could count. Asterisk. The first sound Ethan heard was the pounding of his own footsteps. The second was the heavy boots of soldiers chasing him through the under-level corridors. The palace's metal walls blurred past him, glowing emergency lights flashing red. Somewhere above, alarms wailed like angry voices, echoing down every hall. He turned a sharp corner, his shoulders scraping the wall. A blast from an alien rifle struck just behind him, spraying molten shards across the floor. The vial in his pocket clinked against his armor with every step, the living poison shifting inside. If it broke, he'd be dead before he could even feel pain. Ethan ducked into a side tunnel. The air here was hot, thick with steam from the palace's power systems. He jumped over a tangle of pipes and slid behind a storage unit, pressing his back against the cold metal. The soldiers thundered past, their voices fading into the distance. Only then did Ethan allow himself a single breath. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the vial. The red threads inside pulsed slowly, almost like they were breathing. The old prisoner's words echoed in his head. From the same place the council gets theirs. If the council had access to this poison, they weren't just covering up the attack. They were part of it. A shadow moved across the tunnel wall. Ethan turned, weapon ready. It wasn't a soldier. It was the same alien medic who had given him the data crystal. You found it. The medic whispered, his voice trembling. Found it? Ethan said, I'm holding the Queen's killer in my hand. The medic stepped closer, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Not the killer, he said. The weapon, and there's only one man who can make it. Ethan's grip tightened. Where is he? The medic's eyes darted to a sealed maintenance hatch. Follow this path to the royal chamber, but be careful. The traitor is already there. They moved fast, slipping through narrow passages that twisted through the heart of the palace. The heat grew stronger, the hum of machinery vibrating through the walls. Finally, they emerged into a wide hall lit by golden lights spilling from massive doors ahead. The royal chamber. The medic stopped, his face pale. This is where I leave you, he said, disappearing back into the shadows. Ethan pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The Queen lay in her stasis pod, her body motionless under the pale blue glow. Beside her stood a figure in ornate armor. The Queen's own brother, Lord Careth. His back was to Ethan, but his voice carried clearly, Soon, sister, you will sleep forever, and the war will begin. Ethan stepped forward, his voice sharp. Not if I stop you. Careth turned. Slowly, his golden eyes filled with cold amusement. A human, he said. Of course it's you, always trying to play hero. Ethan held up the vial. This is Careth's blood, and I know you planted it in her heart. Careth laughed softly, the sound chilling in the vast chamber. She wanted peace. He sighed. I want an empire worthy of fear. Your people are perfect scapegoats. Ethan's jaw tightened. You'd kill your own sister for that. I'd kill anyone, Careth replied, because only war makes the weak obey. Before Ethan could move, Careth raised a device in his hand, a small transmitter. This signal, he said, will trigger every drop of Careth's blood in her veins to bloom at once. Ethan didn't wait. He charged, slamming into Careth before the device could activate. They crashed to the floor, the transmitter skittering away across the polished stone. The fight was brutal. Careth was stronger, but Ethan was faster. He blocked a strike, ducked another, and drove his elbow into Careth's side. The traitor stumbled, giving Ethan just enough time to grab the transmitter. With a hard twist, he smashed it against the floor, the metal shattering into useless pieces. Careth froze, breathing hard. You think this changes anything? He said, his voice low. The council is already with me, and without my cure, your queen will still die. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. Then I'll find my own cure. Outside the chamber, the sound of approaching boots filled the air. Ethan knew he had only moments before the room was flooded with guards loyal to Careth. He glanced at the Queen's stasis pod, then at the vial in his pocket. The truth was out, but the fight to save her had only just begun. The palace was quiet for the first time in days, too quiet. Ethan Cross thought as he stood by the Queen's stasis pod. The soft blue light painted her face in cold colors, making her look less like a ruler and more like a fragile statue. The hum of the machines was steady, almost gentle, if not for the faint rise and fall of her chest. She could have been mistaken for already gone. Ethan's hands rested on the edge of the pod, in his pocket. The vial of Careth's blood seemed to pulse like a second heartbeat. He'd learned how it worked, how it spread, but not how to remove it without killing the host. And the only cure, according to Kareth, was locked away in the traitor's private vault. Ethan didn't trust the man's cure, but he did trust one thing: old human knowledge. His grandfather had told him a story once about the First War. A desperate commander, trapped behind alien lines, had saved a Zlar ally using a mix of 2 earth plants. The plants were harmless alone, but together they burned the Karis blood to ash. The plants didn't grow on any alien world, only in certain valleys on Earth. And Ethan had something the commander never did: a secure link to the human colony ships above. He activated his wristcom, crossed to shuttle command. He said, "I need an extraction kit and seeds from the Callan root and bluefire moss. Priority 1. There was a pause, then the reply crackled through. "That's ancient war medicine," the voice said, unsure. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "And it's about to save a queen." Hours passed like days. Finally, a soft beep signaled a delivery drone arriving outside the chamber window. Inside the small container were the plants, sealed in nutrient gel. Ethan worked quickly, crushing the roots, mixing them with the moss, adding drops of purified water from the stasis tank. The smell was sharp, like burned metal and rain. He opened a small port in the stasis pod and injected the mixture directly into the queen's bloodstream. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the red filaments in her scans began to shiver, retracting like worms fleeing a flame. One by one, the glowing threads faded. The machines hummed louder, reading stronger pulses from her heart. Her fingers twitched against the glass. Ethan's own breath caught. "Come on," he whispered. "Stay with me." Slowly her eyes opened, weak, unfocused at first, then locking on his face. "Ethan." "Cross," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "You're safe now," he said, relief breaking through the steel in his voice. Her lips curved faintly. "You have saved." "More than my life," she whispered. "You have saved our future." The doors burst open, guards flooding the room, weapons drawn. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought they'd come for him. But then the queen raised a hand. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice gaining strength. Every soldier froze, then bowed. The queen turned her gaze to Kareth, who had been dragged in chains behind the guards. Her eyes were cold fire. "You will answer for your crimes," she said. Kareth's sneer faded as the guards pulled him away. Ethan watched him go, knowing this victory had cost them all more than they could see yet. The queen placed her hand against the glass of the pod. "When I walk again, I will speak the truth to every world," she said, "and the first name I will say will be yours." Outside the palace, dawn was breaking. The twin suns rose over the silver towers, their light spilling across the city. The streets below were filled with citizens, human and alien, waiting for news. When they heard the queen had survived, a cheer rose that shook the air. Ethan stood at his post on the highest balcony, the wind brushing against his armor. The queen was alive. The empire was safe, for now, but far in the distance, just beyond the suns, he saw the faint glimmer of shapes moving in space. Warships, not Zlar, not human, something else. The peace he had fought for might be real. But the storm was already on its way.